Hey! Hi! How you doing? This is the Gamertron, and welcome back to the Gamertron Show. The video game Wolfenstein: The New Order was one of my favorite video games of the year 2014, one of my top 10 games of that year. I absolutely fell in love with the story, the narrative, the storytelling, the characters and character development, alongside the excellent first-person shooting gameplay that let you dual-wield almost every weapon, alongside having satisfying melee kill animations and a surprisingly decent stealth system. I simply loved Wolfenstein: The New Order. So you can sure as hell bet I was immensely surprised and excited to be hopping back into the boots of protagonist B.J. Blazkowicz and start shooting up hordes of Nazis all over again in the sequel, Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. And now that I've finally played the game, let me share with you my thoughts, feelings, and opinions on it. First thing I want to talk about is the overall visuals and graphics of Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, which are unfortunately a mixed bag. For every well-detailed texture on the character models, in the environments, on props, there are just as many muddy, blurry, low-detailed textures. When it comes to low-detailed textures in the environment and on certain props, it's understandable, it's forgivable, and they usually fade into the background to be overshadowed by the actually really good, really high detail textures. It is totally understandable for any and all video games not to make every single environmental texture or prop texture to be high resolution, high quality. It's about resource management and placing value on what props and what pieces of the environment are more important over others. But where the texture quality is most disappointing are the poor, muddy, blurred, low detail textures on the faces of characters during gameplay. In pre-rendered cutscenes, all the character models, including their faces, the textures are really high detail. All the pre-rendered cutscenes look phenomenal, but then you see their character models in-game, and all of a sudden there's a huge quality spike downwards, at least on the faces, the head. Stuff like clothing and armor look superb and are very well detailed, but they clash totally with characters' faces. Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus is one of those very few video games where the actual graphical quality and detail of the visuals of the graphics can actually be immersion breaking, because the vast majority of textures are really good looking, especially on, surprisingly, the Nazis, the soldiers, the robots, and the texture quality on weapons is superb. The guns look fantastic, but then you look at characters' faces and they're blurry and muddy and low detailed, and it just clashes with everything else. Then you watch the pre-rendered cutscenes and they look fine, they look great. It's very bizarre, very jarring, because Wolfenstein: The New Order didn't have this problem. Faces and character models, overall texture quality in the in-game gameplay matched that of the pre-rendered cutscenes. But in the sequel, The New Colossus, the pre-rendered cutscenes have better visual quality than the gameplay, and it's very jarring. Especially when you consider the fact that The New Colossus uses the id Tech 6 engine over the id Tech 5 engine that The New Order used. id Tech 6 is the same graphics engine used for Doom, and Doom looked absolutely gorgeous and very high detail all around. And while the majority of the textures in The New Colossus are high detail and look great, the low resolution textures in the environments and on the character models, especially the faces, just stand out so much and can be really immersion breaking. It's a damn shame. But one part of the visuals and graphics that The New Colossus nails out of the ballpark is the massive improvement to lighting and special effects. Shadows, sun rays, color shading, gunfire, sparks, explosions, smoke, fire, all look phenomenal. So yeah, when it comes to the overall visual graphical package of Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, it's a mixed bag. It's good for the vast majority, but there are some noticeable imperfections. Up next, I'd like to talk about what was one of the most powerful, the most important, just one of the best aspects of the previous game, Wolfenstein: The New Order. I would now like to talk about the story and narrative of Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. The story in the sequel picks up right off from where the last game ended, and I have to admit, it's a great feeling being reunited with all these characters, and them still being them, alongside having them go through new character arcs and continuing to develop them as characters. The New Colossus makes it feel like you're reuniting with old friends and getting back together on a new, dark, and twisted adventure. The romantic relationship between BJ and Anya is still as strong as ever, equally heartwarming and heartbreaking. The two optional timelines with the side characters, Wyatt and Fergus, both have their own unique and memorable moments, and develop these characters in new and interesting ways, and all the other side characters get their own spot in the sunlight, their own chances to develop, alongside the introduction of brand new characters in the sequel, which are interesting and memorable in their own ways. What really impressed and surprised me is how the story went out of its way to continue to develop our protagonist BJ on much deeper levels, showing us his backstory, his relationship with his mother and father. He's just a really well-developed character, and not some generic throwaway first-person shooter protagonist that we see so often. And like its predecessor, The New Order, The New Colossus finds that balance of being over-the-top, ridiculous pulp action schlock, while also being a grounded and real and dark and gritty take on an alternate sci-fi future where the Nazis won World War II. And this world, this fiction of the Wolfenstein universe is continuously expanded, showing off how the Nazis have taken over and occupied America. Just like The New Order, the world building is fantastic in The New Colossus. Also, returning villain from the previous game, Frau Engel, ends up being a worthy replacement for main antagonist in the sequel, filling that imposing and creepy role of villain that General Death's Head was previously in. Frau Engel makes for an easily likable and easily digestible villain. Lastly, I have to give props to the narrative and storytelling of The New Colossus for just how much it surprised me. It constantly kept me engaged and excited and wanting to see what would happen next. With shocking plot twist after shocking plot twist, on top of just really solid character development, overall, when it comes to the story and storytelling of Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, from my perspective, it is really well done. Really well made, really well told. I really enjoyed and was very satisfied with the story of The New Colossus. Finally, we come to gameplay. This is a Wolfenstein game. This is a first-person shooter. I expect some high-intensity Nazi slaughtering action here. And oh boy, does The New Colossus deliver. Just about all the base mechanics from the previous game return in the sequel. Admittedly, however, overall gameplay and movement feels a lot less weighty and heavy and chunky. Overall controls and movement feel a lot more weightless. That's not really a negative, that's more personal taste and perspective. The overall shooting and gameplay, however, is smooth and responsive. Almost all the original weapons from the previous game return in the sequel. The pistol, the assault rifle, the shotgun, the laser craft work, all of which feel just as good, just as satisfying to fire and shoot and kill enemies with as in the previous game, especially those shotguns. Oh, those shotguns. But we also have some new additions in the form of an SMG that you can upgrade into a nail gun, and a grenade launcher pistol, which is very similar and familiar to the grenade launcher pistol found in the prequel, sequel, spin-off of The New Order, The Old Blood. While all the weapons are great and satisfying, and can all be upgraded to be more powerful and effective, or have unique mechanics and traits that differentiate them more from the other weapons, like adding a scope on the assault rifles which makes them semi-automatic and have greater range, or the returning weapon upgrade from the previous game making the shotguns have shots that ricochet, and the previously mentioned SMGs that can be turned into nail guns. While all these weapons are great and satisfying and fun to play with and fun to kill Nazis with, all these weapons standalone are fun enough on their own, but where the real beauty of Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus' gameplay comes in when it comes to the combat and the shooting is the dual-wielding mechanic. I love the dual-wielding mechanic in The New Order, how you could dual-wield weapons that you usually would never be able to dual-wield in first-person shooter games. How you could dual-wield the assault rifles, the shotguns, the sniper rifles. And now with Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, they have upgraded and improved the dual-wielding system, because now you can dual-wield and mix and match all the different weapons. And it is fucking glorious. I can't explain how much fun it is. Shooting Nazis with an assault rifle in one hand and a shotgun in the other. Or the absolutely devastating combo of the laser craft work in one hand and the grenade pistol in the other just absolutely melts the mini-boss-like robo-Nazi enemies. While personally, I would have liked to seen a few more main weapons, as the sniper rifle that transforms into a laser rifle is surprisingly absent from The New Order in The New Colossus. It is somewhat made up for with the ability to mix and match the different weapons in the dual wielding. It is also made up for by the surprisingly vast expansion of heavy weapons. In Wolfenstein: The New Order, all you got in terms of heavy weapons was a minigun and a laser minigun. In The New Colossus, you get a laser cannon, a flamethrower / flame cannon, a flak autocannon, and for one story mission in the game, you get access to what is essentially a black hole supernova launcher. Despite the short length of time you get to use it, it is immensely satisfying in a visual spectacle. So despite the change in weight and feel of the controls, the overall gameplay, the overall combat, the overall shooting remains at a very satisfactory quality. I found the first-person shooting combat gameplay loop of the new Colossus to be so much fun. That is only added by some special abilities and equipment that you earn just about at the halfway mark of the game, that provide Blazkowicz with some interesting new abilities and ways to interact and move around the environment. The ramshackles let you burst straight through certain walls, as well as crush Nazis with heavy ramming speed while sprinting. The constrictor harness allows BJ to crawl into some really tight areas, including vents and pipes, and allow him to more easily and stealthily move around the environment undetected. And the battle walker gives BJ elevated height, allowing him to reach higher vantage points, avoid being attacked by melee enemies, and they have a nice little statistic bonus where you regain some health upon getting a kill while using the battle walker. All these new upgrades, gear, and abilities are weird, ridiculous, and over the top, and add great variety and strategy to the gameplay. They give you more options in how you engage a combat scenario. Do you sprint in headfirst with the ramshackles bursting through a wall, running into Nazis, getting into close quarters combat with the shotguns? Do you prefer a stealthier playstyle, sneaking around in the environment while the constrictor harness is for you? Do you like getting elevated positions, taking the high ground, while the battle walker can give you strategic advantages in the environment when engaging in shootouts? All these new upgrades and abilities have their own uses and can be used in creative ways, all of which are utilized against some very familiar foes. Basically, all the different Nazi enemy types from the previous game return in the new Colossus. The commanders that call for reinforcements, the typical soldiers, the heavy shotgunners, the attack dogs, the super soldiers, and the super soldiers have a much greater emphasis and show up much more in the new Colossus than they did in the New Order. Super soldiers now have an explosive backpack attached to them, which you can use to create massive area of effect damage, and super soldiers always drop heavy weapons. So these enemy types actually become a strategic asset in how and when you kill them, and if you take their heavy weapons to use in combat, because their heavy weapons are extremely effective. Panzerhunds return from the New Order. However, unlike the previous game, there are far more encounters with the Panzerhunds, and they also now breathe fire. The little annoying flying drones return, and the giant Nazi robots from the previous game have gotten a major upgrade in the new Colossus. They're now bigger and meaner and take more damage and deal way more damage than before. We have the addition of two new enemy types, robot Nazi soldiers that shoot lasers and have the ability to perform a very fast dash move, and Laserhunds, which are robot Cyclops dogs that move extremely fast and can fire a powerful laser beam. Overall, there's a decent variety of Nazis and robot Nazis to shoot up, blow up, and hack into several little pieces with the new addition, the replacement melee weapon for the dual-wield knives in the New Order. In the new Colossus, we have the hatchet for melee takedowns and stealth takedowns. And oh boy, those melee and stealth takedowns are just as satisfying, if not more satisfying, than they are from the New Order in the new Colossus. BJ is just aggressive and savage as fuck with that hatchet on the Nazis. Lot more blood, lot more gore, lot more dismemberment. Finally, I'd like to show appreciation for the side missions, the Oberkommando missions, which are basically you revisiting levels from the single-player campaign but with different enemy placement, with no story or cutscenes or in-game dialogue to interrupt the gameplay. It's a nice little addition. Add some more content and replayability. Now, for the majority of this video, I have been praising Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. I genuinely really like the game. I really enjoyed the game. It is a well-made video game for the most part, but nothing is perfect, and I do have some negatives. I do have some dislikes. I do have some criticisms I want to share. First off, I cannot understand for the life of me why the developers, Machine Games, have regressed in terms of the save system. We now have 3 different save profiles, which is fine, that's fine. But instead of having a chapter select system, a level select, a level replay system like in the New Order, which was perfectly fine, was excellent, wasn't broken, didn't require fixing, for some reason, we now have a manual save system with only 10 save slots. In the new Colossus, isn't this supposed to be a sequel? Why are we regressing in certain areas? I wouldn't mind the manual save slots, but why are we limited to only 10 save slots? If you want to replay certain story missions, certain moments in the story campaign, you have to strategically know ahead of time when a mission is ending, when it's starting, and what parts you want to replay. It also means if you miss certain collectibles in some of the story missions, you can't replay those story missions to go back and get those collectibles. You have to start a brand new game all over again if you're a completionist and you want to collect all the collectibles. I just don't understand understand how we went from a chapter, level select, level replay save system from the New Order to a limited manual save system in the new Colossus. Why? Why? Just why? This significantly hurts replayability. In the New Order and in the Old Blood, you could replay any story mission, any level you wanted when you wanted. Now you have to strategically manually save at certain points in the game. It's such an inconvenience. Why, Machine Games? Why did you do this? Up next, I personally believe that there has been somewhat of a downgrade in level design, at least in terms of the combat arenas from the New Order to the new Colossus. The levels, the combat arenas in the new Colossus just have a lot of open areas with little to no cover, while the game swarms you with enemies from every direction. Now, not every level is like this. There are some good levels with good level design that do have a nice amount of cover, but I found that there are several levels throughout the story missions that force you into certain playstyles. Whereas in the New Order, you had the options of going in stealthy, close quarters combat, keeping your distance, and shooting from afar. With the new Colossus, I found that its level design forced me into certain playstyles. Oh, this story mission wants me to play stealthy. That's why there's so much cover, enemies patrolling far away apart from one another. Oh, this story mission wants me to have an aggressive close quarters playstyle. That's why there's nothing but corridors in a small circular arena. To me personally, this was quite noticeable in the first half of the game, and a bit disappointing because in its predecessor, in the New Order, I felt like I could play how I wanted to play. I didn't feel like I was being forced into any particular playstyle. Yes, there are forced action and shooting segments. It's a first-person shooter, you kinda need to have those. But for the first half of the new Colossus, I consistently felt like, oh, now you can play stealthy. Oh, now you can go guns blazing. Granted, this issue I have with the first half of the new Colossus, with its playstyles being limited via the level design, is for the most part remedied in the second half once you get all the different new upgrades and abilities with the ramshackles, the constrictor harness, and the battle walker, as they add more variety and options, and make certain playstyles more effective, but that's only in the latter half of the game. I feel like for the first half of the new Colossus, a lot of player choice, a lot of player freedom is a bit taken away, or restricted. Granted, in the previous game, the New Order, there were some somewhat forced stealth segments, but in my opinion, they felt a bit more natural. Honestly, the level design and the overall implementation of stealth in the new Colossus is just jarring to me. It's not horrible, it's not unplayable, it's just not as, I guess the best way I can put it, not as well-paced as the New Order. The new Colossus is still serviceable, still well-made. I just personally find that the overall gameplay pacing and level design better, or at the very least, more preferable in Wolfenstein the New Order and Wolfenstein the Old Blood. However, finally, overall, in the end, Wolfenstein 2 the New Colossus is a worthy sequel to Wolfenstein the New Order. Wolfenstein 2 the New Colossus is a fantastic video game, with a really well-told, deep, and at times creative story, satisfying, frantic, intense, and over-the-top first-person shooting gameplay. I really did enjoy my time with Wolfenstein 2 the New Colossus. I can easily say it's one of my favorite games of the year, one of my favorite games, one of the best games of 2017. I had a great time with. I really enjoyed. I love Wolfenstein 2 the New Colossus. Anyways, that's been a video. I hope you liked the video. If you did indeed like the video in any way, shape, or form, please be sure to hit the like button. And the like button helps you, helps me, helps everybody involved in the video. If you hit the like button, please leave a comment in the comment section down below. Have you played Wolfenstein 2 the New Colossus? What do you think of the game? Let me know your thoughts, feelings, and opinions in the comment section down below. If you want to help out and support this video, please share it on social media, Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to help out and support me directly, well, there's always Patreon. Anyways, guys, this has been a video, and I'll see you all later.